How do you know where you are in space? We're going to talk about that next on how we got to the moon.
We choose to go to the moon.
When you're on planet Earth, it's pretty easy to figure out where you are. But what happens when you go into space? Luckily, in the 1950s, a man by the name of Charles Stark Draper invented a machine called an inertial guidance system. Now, this machine was absolutely critical in helping us get to the moon. His thought process for designing this machine was this: if you know your exact location, where you're starting from, and you can keep track of how fast and in which direction you're moving, you will know exactly where you are at any given time. For example, if I started at the end of my driveway and I ran 10 miles an hour directly due north, I know that in 1 hour I will be 10 miles from my starting point. That's easy when you're on Earth. I mean, my reference point, my driveway, never moved. But what happens once you leave Earth in a rocket ship? Suddenly, the Earth is spinning at 1,000 miles an hour at the equator. Not only that, it's rotating around the sun. So you have a reference point that's moving. That's no good. So what Charles Stark Draper did was he decided to create a new reference point that they could use when they're traveling through space. The key element in Draper's machine was called an inertial platform. Inert meaning motionless. So inside the rocket, no matter how much the rocket moved, rotated, spun, this remained the same, and this became the new reference point. It also measured how fast the rocket was going. So it could measure its orientation and how fast. And we're going to talk more about that in part 2 of this video. So the inertial platform can measure both the direction and the speed of the rocket. And if you know your starting point, you'll know exactly where you are at any given time. More importantly, you'll also know what you need to do to get where you want to go. Now, not all machines are perfect. And in fact, over time, the friction inside the inertial guidance platform would cause it to start to drift a little bit. And so the astronauts would have to calibrate it. And the way they did this was they used the stars and they used a sextant, just like ancient mariners. So they would measure the angle between two stars, and that would allow them to find their exact location and orientation. So they would know in which direction they were going, and they would also know in which direction the rocket was facing, which was critical because if they had to fire the rocket, they wanted to be going in the right direction. So Draper's inertial guidance system was made up of 3 parts: the inertial platform, the Apollo guidance computer, which calculated all the input from the inertial platform, and the sextant, which allowed the astronauts to calibrate the inertial platform. And together, these 3 worked so that they would always know exactly where they were and always know exactly what they needed to do to get to where they wanted to go. In this case, the moon.